Sammy Jaime Marrero and Luisa Mendoza, and they are going to be speaking on navigating entrepreneurship as a Latina. So are you ladies ready to go?
Yes, we are.
Hello, hello.
Hi, please enable my video, please.
Same here.
There we go.
Gracias, Sandra. Yay. And hey, Luisa.
Hello, Sammy. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. And we want to say hi to everyone. And we want to just get right to it, right? We're going to be talking about that shift that we both experienced going from corporate into entrepreneurship, from worker bees to queen bees. And so just to provide a little context, Luisa, talk to me about your business, and that way everyone's aware of what we do, right, on a day-to-day.
Absolutely, Sammy. Well, first, I want to say buenas tardes, mujeres bellas, and any men that's on here watching, gracias por el apoyo. And I just want to take a moment to say to Sandra and Ileana, bravo, what an amazing kickoff. So grateful to be in this together. And Sammy, so happy to be sharing the stage with you to talk about that, something that's so near and dear to our hearts, and that is entrepreneurship, right? Of making that shift from corporate America, nice, big, comfy jobs, and, and what in the world made us say, you know what, we want to work hard for ourselves. And so I took the leap of faith to leave the MBA, working for the Brooklyn Nets with a background in tourism. I saw that there was a huge gap between sports and tourism. And January of 2020, I decided to launch Global Tourism, Sports and Entertainment to be a one-stop shop for the world to have an opportunity to buy tickets to any sporting event in the United States and beyond. But more to come, because remember the year I started and the month, January.
Oh my
2020.
goodness, yes. And it's like, que locura, right? And so then I too started my business from one moment to the other, and we'll get into that in a moment, in 2008. So Urbander is a solutions-driven communications firm, and our focus right now is restoring trust, right, in the business community through multimedia, multicultural content development offerings, and all that good stuff. And so launching the business in 2008 was quite an undertaking. And I remember my father telling me, pero estás loca. We're in the middle of a recession. Are you crazy? But at that moment, I felt like I had no other option because there were millions of people being laid off. I was one of them, right? And so that was a moment where I just had to put the machete between my teeth and start hunting, right? And so talk to me about you launching the business during another epic crisis, right? The pandemic. And so we can talk about those hard times and how we've landed on solid ground.
Absolutely. And I think that's such an important question, because our goal today is to be real and just talk about not only the successes and, obviously we know we live in a world where social media portrays, the awards, the speaking opportunities, but what happens behind that? Like, the tears and the fears, and how did we overcome that to get to where we are today? And so, as I shared, January 2020, I'm like, this is going to be the year of my life, the best year. February, Univision calls me to be interviewed as the first Latina in the United States to start a global sports, tourism, and entertainment company. I have 6-figure deals with multiple teams in the US. And then March, the pandemic hit. And then I got COVID. And for me, I was like, okay, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, what are you trying to teach me here? And what are the lessons? Because I have learned that everything in life happens for a reason. And at the moment, it's like Steve Jobs. He used to say, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. And today what I realized is that the pandemic was probably one of the best things that happened for the growth of my business, for me to get to where I am today, because for the first time, people slowed down and people could talk and people actually would listen to you. And so I was able to do tons of focus groups to really understand the gap that there was between sports and tourism, and how could we be the bridge to unite both industries. And, you know, I think for me, in terms of like, you know, some key elements of even starting in such a hard time like you in the pandemic, it was our network, right? And I think that's one of the things that we both identified, is that when I didn't know what was going to happen because the world was so uncertain, the world was locked down, there was no sports, there was no tourism, there was no entertainment. But my values, my core, my mission, I knew is that was what gave me the strength to take care of my parents and my daughter, and to never give up no matter what. That kept me going, pedal to the metal, right? Like just keep on going. And for me, truly, I think the big thing I always say, and obviously in the book, I talk about having angels and in a business suit. But for me, it was creating those alliances and being able to really reach out to the US Travel Association and say to them, how can I get involved in the largest tourism trade show? And it was a white male, ladies, right? And we make them our allies. They're not the enemy in the room. How can we work with them is my message, right? And I said to Malcolm Smith, I said, Malcolm, I need to be at IPW, but my company just took off and we've made no money because there's been no sports, tourism, or entertainment. And he goes, Luisa, I know your background and I believe in you. And I want you to be our official sports and tourism ambassador to the United States Travel Association and IPW. And I share that with you, ladies, because one moment, one phone call, and Sammy, I can't wait for you to share your phone call that gave you the opportunity. But that phone call changed the trajectory of GTSE, and the rest is history, you know. So I'll start with that, and love for you to jump in and share your call, right? I think we could have a book called the call that changed my life.
Oh my goodness. And that's, and so just so everyone knows, Lisa and I already had a one-on-one before this where we were crying. So now we can like keep it together, right? And share without these types of emotional, right, interruptions. But this whole idea that entrepreneurship is so sexy, you know, it's important to share those first few months, those first few years of these experiences, because it's a very lonely road, people, very, very lonely road. And so when I started, it was very abrupt. I was working for the New York Post at the time for 4 years, living la vida loca, just really, you know, with a corporate car, traveling. It was like epic, right? And so while I thought I had my stuff together, all of a sudden this external thing called a recession affected everybody. Was asked to move back to New York City to keep my job. And I said, no, right? I'm based out of Orlando. I had just had my son. And so I just negotiated a severance pay, but I had no roots here in Orlando. And so what I had to do was start calling everybody on my Rolodex. Remember those? Okay. Person after person, coast to coast, calling everybody I knew, telling them I'm open for business because there was no jobs to be found, right? Paying what I thought I was worth, and also here in the local market. So that being said, after I placed all my calls, then I sat y todo lo que se oían eran grillo, crickets, right? It was so scary, you know, but I kept on toiling, creating my value proposition, working on packages, just getting ready for that call, for that window of opportunity. But I got to tell you, about 2 weeks before, okay, and I kept on seeing that bank account, right, dwindling. The house was already delinquent. My mortgage was delinquent because I had to buy baby formula, and I was, you know, doing la compra on those credit cards and jacking up, you know, those bills. I almost lost my mind one day, and I clearly remember, you know, that I completely collapsed, and I said, Lord, please throw me a freaking bone because I'm about to lose my mind. I'm about to lose my mind. And about 2 days later, I get a call from Lara Walks, a white female, good friend of mine from the publishing industry. And she calls me up and she tells me, hey, are you still in business? And I said, absolutely. And I said, why? She's like, I'm going to Africa for 2 weeks and my marketing manager just quit. She was the marketing director at that time for Parents Magazine. Remember Meredith and Parents Magazine? I don't know if they're still around, but she tells me I have to go away and my marketing manager just quit. And you're the only person, the same as Luisa, right? Is that reputation that you build in your corporate career, right? Precedes you, okay, and follows you throughout. And she says, and there's no one I trust to work on these RFPs because it was the planning season for media on Unilever and Procter & Gamble and GM and all of these big brands, right? Than you. Will you take over for me, right? While I travel for 2 weeks? And I said, absolutely, under one condition. And this goes back to Beatrice's comment about the ask, right? We need to learn what to ask and when to ask. And I told my girlfriend, Lara, and I said, under one condition, if you give me a 3-month contract. And her response was, you're so mean. Okay, give me 10 minutes. And she called me back. Okay, 10 minutes later, she says, you got it. I have nothing else left for the rest of the year. It's October. It's $13,500. And I remember the number because it was my first big break. And she's like, when I get back and in January, we'll discuss your new contract, but for the love of God, tell me yes, that you're going to help me while I'm away. And I said, oh yeah. And so then I was able to pay my mortgage, get it up to date, and that really saved the day. So it's those relationships, people, lean in on each other. We can't be gatekeepers. We can't be greedy. We can't be stingy. We can't be mean. Kindness. Let's exercise kindness and open doors and edify each other. And so in that, what do you feel is the magic sauce aside from relationships? What else has worked for you as you've navigated, right, this new experience of entrepreneurship, Luisa?
Absolutely, Sammy. And again, thank you for sharing that story because I just love, I think one of the big things, even in hearing you say, is being intentional and putting things out into the universe. You are the average of the 6 people that you spend time with. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I really am so keen on who I surround myself with. I love to be around people that believe in me, that will have my back. And so creating that community of friends, of mentors during the pandemic, when I was just launching my business and obviously had all these bills and I was like, how am I going to do this? Having faith for me was huge and being grateful for every opportunity. And in that, I started listening to people like Oprah Winfrey, like Mark Cuban, Tony Robbins. These were my go-to every day on YouTube, right? And one thing that Mark Cuban said was, the best investment you will ever make is the investment you make on yourself. Mm-hmm. And so I hired a business coach. With the little that I had, I was like, okay, let me hire a business coach. And I hired Marcus Ogden, who his story just touched me because he went from being an NFL player, making millions, to an entrepreneur, making wrong decisions, losing everything, becoming a janitor, hitting rock bottom, and rising to the top today as a world-renowned author, motivational speaker, and business coach. I was like, that's my guy. And so I hired him, and he's been a part of my life since the pandemic. And he helps me to be very intentional, clear. I have a bi-weekly call with him and bi-monthly call, twice a month I meet with him. And we talk about what are my successes, what are my challenges. And one of the main things that he taught me in the midst of all of this was to diversify my portfolio, to not put all my eggs in the same basket, especially in this economy, ladies. And he asked me a very powerful question that led me to open 2 other companies during the pandemic. He said, what are you really good at that you can start monetizing?
Yes.
And where do you have expertise? And that's when I realized that I could represent companies in Latin America because of my background. Before the MBA, I was the director for Spain and Latin America for the NYC and Company, the official tourism office for New York. So I built a company, brought 2 business partners on board for that one. And then he asked me another really amazing question. He said, if you could do one job and not get paid $1 to do it, what would that be? And I said, to be a speaker, to motivate, to empower, to help others. And he said, well, there's your other business. And I was like, really? So I went into the pandemic with one business, freaking out, like, oh my God. And I came out of the pandemic with multiple businesses, learning to not put all my eggs in one basket. And I'm like, and just having a team that I can delegate, learning that it's okay to not have all the answers, to be vulnerable, to build an empire. It can't be an empire of one. You have to have people supporting you. And it starts with those mentors, those business coaches, and pushing yourself. And I always say, if your dreams don't scare you, then you're not dreaming big enough. And I say that to my daughter every day. I'm like, what are you dreaming for? And she tells me this. I'm like, are you scared? And she goes, not yet. I'm like, then dream bigger, baby, dream bigger. And so I think that's some of the key foundations of critical lessons that I learned, and just trying to outpour to all of these amazing people that are watching us today, so that they too can be inspired, because many might be on the fence. But what was it for you, Sammy? I'm curious, along
For me, yes, for me, it was, so things that I learned very quickly. Number one is that I needed a good CPA and a good lawyer. So if you're looking to start your business, start with, you must, it's the best money you'll invest to, aside from obviously getting a coach or a mentor, right? But really, a CPA and a good lawyer is critical, and to start establishing a relationship with a banking institution. So those are the 3 things, right? Banking or the finances, the CPA and the lawyer. Then also look around you, pause, and find other organizations or companies or suppliers that you can collaborate with to build bandwidth quickly. Break bread with people. That's how I network. Let's have lunch on me, right? Let's do this, right? So we can get to know each other and become intimate with each other's strengths, right? So that we can quickly and swiftly pitch account together and build business quicker. And then last but not least, I became very, very involved in the community, like extremely involved, so much that 5 years later, I started a nonprofit, because to me, in our community, entrepreneurship and activism and advocacy are not mutually exclusive, right? And so in these spaces, I was able to demonstrate our capabilities, the quality of our work. I could exercise my advocacy muscle and speak up, right? And entrepreneurship, I feel, afforded me the freedom to say what I say and say what I mean, right? I show up in spaces and really take up a lot of space respectfully, right? But assertively, because it's what we need to do. And so I feel that those are some of the big ahas and big things, right, that have afforded me to now stand walking into our quinceañero, right, on solid ground, and then continue to meet. And even if we have overlapping services, it's important to join forces with other people so you can also learn more, right? And always add on to your capabilities. I remember one client once says, hey, I love the video content that you produce for us. Do you guys do animations? And I said, absolutely, embute. I had never done animations, but I knew who to call, right? In my network, someone I totally trusted, and we banged it on. I can't even tell you how many animated series we've done since, right? So it's great. But I wanted another thing that's very similar in both our trajectories, Luisa, is that we're both self-funded. We decided not to find investors, right? And to self-fund. Tell me your why. Tell me your why.
I'm going to be 100% transparent here, because I believe that, that's what today's about: authenticity and being real. So when I launched my business, I initially was going to I had my investor deck, and I was going to go the investor route. But ladies, when a door closes, sometimes is the best thing that can happen to you. I am so grateful today that I did not take money from investors, because along the way, I met someone who said to me the most powerful thing. He said, do not bring on investors for positions that you can hire.
Mhm.
And I want you guys to listen to that very carefully, because that can save you so many, like at the end of the day, your company is your baby. And every time you bring an investor, yes, they'll give you money, but you are losing a portion of your company.
Mhm.
And it all depends on the business. There's some businesses that you don't need so much capital at the beginning,
Mhm.
and you can self-fund. And if you can, and then you can go that route, amazing. Other businesses, maybe not. But in our, I guess both of us, we were lucky enough that our business model, we didn't need so much cash up front. We didn't need stores. We didn't have merchandise and all of that. It was different what we were doing, that I'm glad at the end of the day, it all worked out the way it did. And today, you know, again, I think one of the things with business is you have to be prepared to constantly be evolving.
Mhm.
Whatever your business plan is today, that's awesome. But I guarantee you 3 years from now, you'll look back and say, oh my God, if I would have just been in business, you can't look at things black and white. You got to live in the gray. And for me, that was huge, was being able to not bring on those investors at the beginning. Down the road, I don't know if I may need one. So I don't want to completely,
Mhm.
you can't burn bridges, right? You
Claro.
never know.
Mhm.
But for now, I'm so grateful that I was self-funded, and it's tough. And I was reading some of the comments as Latinas, I mean, Latinos in general, whether you're a man or a woman, to get a loan and to get funding, it's so difficult. And now add the Latina component, a woman and a female it's tough. So if you get it, great. If you don't, see how you can be creative. But the less people that you have to bring on as investors, the more control you will have of your company. And that for me was something that just has made so much of a difference. What about you, Sammy?
Well, to me, I wanted to just, yeah, to me, the same thing. Well, I maxed out my credit cards, had to buy, equipment and stuff like laptop and all of that. But yes, it was a small investment to get going because it was all here, right? But I was part of a 2-year program with Georgia Tech and Morehouse College and my girlfriend Lakeisha in Atlanta, where we were creating an ecosystem of minority business enterprises in the Southeast. And part of it was a design thinking process and the whole thing. But we did some research and we interviewed 64 minority business enterprises. And I think this is valuable information. What came out of the research was that we asked them, go back to those first 6 months that you were in business. What is that magic number in terms of capital that would have made your life easier? Basically, so you could do research and development to set everything up and not be como que asfixiado, right? And some said more, some said less, but the magic number was $30,000. In the grand scheme of things, that's not really a lot of money. But if you're thinking of going the entrepreneurship route, just use that as a barometer, right? As a barometer of what the average, right, need is to make sure you cover your bills and that you're able to focus on your business plan, on really planning. Not like me. At the beginning, I was winging it because I had to put food on the table, right? But eventually, right, as I learned the art of entrepreneurship, because it is an art, then I was able to then also share. And this is what we're trying to do, is share with all of you the ways in which you can jump into entrepreneurship, right? And dodge some balls that might come your way. So that way you mitigate risk and you're able to land on the other side successfully, right? And in a quicker amount of time. And so now I'm happy to say that I have a business line of credit, but yes, it was completely self-funded. And it took a little bit of time, right? To be able to find out how it works, how to read a balance sheet, what cash flow was all about, right? And the P&L and all of these things that allow you to understand how healthy or not your business is and what's the low-hanging fruit so you can start generating revenues as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. And we see Sandra's back.
Oh my gosh, guys, there's so many comments in the chat. Sammy, what a powerful and bold move. Beautiful story. God's timing is perfect. Anyone want to leave their corporate jobs now, hearing from this panel? That's a great one. Yes, so powerful, absolutely spot on. Self-funding, it's tough. Stiletto strapping, that's a good one. You gotta start using that one. You have to ask. I love that. Don't have your eggs in one basket. It's important to connect with others. You mentioned diversify your portfolio. How powerful is that? Luisa, let's get a good coach. That's profound. And Sammy, CPA and a good lawyer.
Yes. One last thing I want to comment though is about the challenge with motherhood though, right? I was guilt-ridden for many years until maybe 2 years ago about feeling as inadequate, because as Latinas, we're defined, right, by how we mother and our caregiving. You know, if you're a tia, madrina, if you haven't birthed children, still as being a caregiver. And so until a friend, an older friend, businesswoman too, told me, Nena, you're fine. You're modeling behavior and they're learning stuff that they wouldn't learn, right? Normally. And I'm like, oh, okay, good perspective. Thank you. And so then I'm guilt-free now.
That's so important. And I guess to end, and I agree with you, Sammy. I was just there the other day. I was telling my daughter something of when I was young and my parents were so much older, and my mom would come to school with me and the kids would be like, oh, look at your grandma. And it was my mom. And my daughter said to me, and this is the moment I can connect with you, Sammy. My daughter says, you know, mommy, I wonder how many of those kids that made fun of you are now an entrepreneur. They're probably working 9 to 5s. And I was like, okay, all right, we're doing this. We're bringing them up and teaching them as role models. But my last nugget of wisdom that I would be so remiss if I didn't share, the one thing for me that got me from corporate to entrepreneurship, the one piece of advice from Julia Pimsleur, the author of $1 Million Woman, when I went to her conference, she said to me 2 things. 1, build a business plan. I had no idea, guys. I looked up business plans. I was like, how do I do this? And 2, she said, you have 1 week to complete it. I was like, está loca. I'm a full-time mother. I take care of my parents. I'm going on a business trip. And this woman wants a business plan in a week. And she said, yes, because if I give you a month, it'll take a month. If I give you 6 months, it'll take 6 months. If I give you a year, you'll take a year. And then the second thing that she said to me that was bomb, like it was like mic drop. She said, remember, perfection is the enemy of done. Don't wait for it to be perfect. Just get it done, because a business plan is constantly evolving.
We need a mic drop, like, that was amazing. That was amazing. We have so many comments in the chat. You ladies are like gold. I can't wait to do this again with you guys. Thank you so much for such beautiful share. Everybody's been inspired. I think that rejuvenated. If you're thinking about starting a business, we got to take risks. We got to take challenges. We got to go for it. So you guys have exemplified that so beautifully, and just, I love you guys. You know I love you guys. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we are moving now on to a power talk conversation. I'm excited to introduce Erasmin Lopez Cobo. Hopefully I pronounced that completely all the way right.